Lion never got his beat that bad.
Overcharge the ion accelerator. It's time to forge the narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host, Bale Bell Lost Souls Podcast. I'm joined by Adam Camilleri.
Oh, hello.
Tanya Gates and Red Powell.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Brand new eyes on the assault phase. Like FAQ time, change time. You know, I think it would have been hard to predict that any kind of change like this was coming. But there was a recent release of FAQs. And one of the things it actually did, if you go into like the Knights and the Chaos Knights, is giving them the appropriate like household keywords. So if anybody had those Imperial Armor Forge World Knights, they can now more easily incorporate them into their army list, which I think is actually a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, good. And needed to happen.
Yeah. That always seems to be kind of slow to catch up. And I guess, we can't take anything for granted, but it seems like like whenever there's a new codex and the keywords change, it takes a little bit for the Forge World stuff to get updated, if it ever does.
But yeah, exciting changes and necessary clarifications as well. It's nice G-Dubs being a little agile on this one, especially. And I say agile, I guess it hasn't really been. That was a bit of a misnomer. But for those who don't know what's changed, you can no longer... There was a bit of an exploit in the game where if you stayed 1.1 inch away from the inside of a ruined wall, because your opponent couldn't place their base within like 25 mils maybe, in certain configurations, but most of the time a 32 mil base or bigger cannot be placed between that gap, and therefore the unit couldn't complete the charge, couldn't be placed there because they can't come within an inch to shoot.
You couldn't float within the middle of the wall.
Exactly. You can't exist. Yeah. It's one of the limitations of a tabletop game. You have to actually physically be able to fit the base of the model, but also one of the strengths. So yeah, I'm happy they made a little clarification. What did they change though?
So the physics of the game, we talk about that a lot on the show, and I'm glad they matter. Like, if you learn how those things work within the construct of the rules, and you begin to master those things, and we'll talk about as far as like moving models in the assault phase and movement of the game in general. If you master that, then it's one of the ways to get better at the game. So savvy players recognized that if you were 1.1, like you said, inches away from the wall, then most in the assault phase, when you declared your assault, it puts some extra length in the roll that you needed to make, if you could make it at all, by getting around the walls and in contact and engagement range. Now, I shouldn't say contact because that's an important distinction here. Within the game allotted engagement range of the opponent's army or units that you were trying to charge. Yeah,
because like you have to. There are different engagement ranges that almost. Unless said otherwise, your engagement range is 1 inch. If you're not within an inch, you can't activate and you didn't complete the charge of the thing you declared as a charge. Yeah, so if you're 1.1 away and they can't place the base, you can't come within an inch, therefore you can't complete the charge. So it was a bit of a trap that you could. It did create feel bad's environments. I mean, we're going to talk about a big scary demon in a minute, and his whole the whole shtick of Khorne demons is that they get stuck in, and you've got a bloodletter bomb that you paid a bunch of points for in some CP to give it a good charge from reserve, and we're exactly 1.1 from the wall. You can't charge us. Your whole army doesn't work.
It felt rough. Like if you were playing against an opponent who was not aware of that, I think it very much did feel like a gotcha.
Well, you never want to say your opponent. Well, it's any time that your opponent thinks a thing can happen and you have to say, sorry, wait, and explain that's stuff that you want to avoid in the game. That automatically is something you want to try and avoid. The best example is the one I just gave. 20 or 30 bloodletters, deep struck down in position to complete a charge and kill some intercessors on an objective, score some points, whatnot. You deep struck them. You've gone through the shooting phase if you've got one, psychic phase if you've got one, and then you get to the charge phase and your opponent has to say, sorry, but you can't. And that's bad. We need to try and dodge that as a community, as a game.
But if you're 1.1 away, and I understand like you're talking about some other examples, but like the 28 millimeter base is going to be able to fit in, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the bloodletter bomb can technically get in.
True, but for the same reasons, there are ways you can block out The example,
you
is
can,
sure. The
you can
example, sure.
block out larger ones. And I think what
Yeah.
I'm kind of heading here is I understand we're calling it an exploitation of the mechanics, because there's certain aspects like, okay, I get it. Like munitions don't go through buildings. You can't just like
Yeah.
target building, destroy building, kill everything inside. However, with the tactical aspect of the game, so there are only so many things that technically move through walls, right? And your example is good up to the point that I'm pretty sure even a 30 millimeter base can still fit in within 1.1, right? And so understanding that this is a thing, and understanding that if I go into an urban environment or even a, house in the middle of nowhere, if they've got a basement or something, I've got to have the right thing to go in there and get to it. And sometimes, I'm sorry, I don't have an A10 or something like a
No,
B1
man, you're crossing
bomber.
in between, like you're removing the abstract from
No. But that's the thing. I actually think that you're right. Like I'm removing certain parts of the abstract, but this still applies. I think you just need the right tools to go in there and get it. And if you don't bring the right tools because you wanted to spam something else, like then you made that decision. You made that tactical decision that you weren't going to be able to go in and do something.
Or you're playing orcs and nothing that can punch it. Well, you can charge them with Gretchen, because orcs can't fit anymore. They're all on 32s. So cool. Okay, so you got the right tool. It can't do the job. Is that what you're saying? That's just fine.
I mean, some armies are stuck with that, right? Like that's the reality of different environments. You take certain army aspects. I'm sorry, not everybody has the exact same thing and can handle problem sets the exact same way. Like I don't think that I'm okay with that, because that's how it is in certain regards. Not everybody can do the same thing. Not everybody can do Desert Storm, Shock and Awe, right? Some people try it and they just don't do that well. They get hung up.
I just don't think those things are necessarily related. Although, when you approach the game of pre-FAQ, pre-clarification, or not even a clarification, errata, pre-errata is what I mean. Sometimes we use FAQ as what we really mean is rules changed. I'm really glad that, like, just for like part of my brain, they've actually started calling them erratas on the Warhammer community site and things, and not just FAQs. I like that better. This is a change. Pre-change, I think you're exactly right. That's the line of thinking. Post-change, it seems like this is to remove some of that from the game and make it a little bit more interactive.
Well, because I mean, we talk about the difference between immersion and game physics, yeah. Because it's a funny situation that we come to. Immersion-wise, a custody is less able to break their way through a wall and make combat, even though they're on a 40 mil, 50 mil base if they're a Terminator. Super soldier, 2 supers on that soldier, he's unable to make it through that wall and make combat. But the Sister of Silence, who is literally just a null regular human, despite being absolutely badass, is. It's an interesting, it busts the immersion bubble on top of being possibly a feels bad. I do understand where Red is coming from. I do not want it where every unit can do everything. I do not want it. I want there to be hard decisions to make in
the factor of what you take in your army. Like there's
exactly right.
Exactly it's like right. That next level layer of list building.
When we get to everything can do everything, we're just playing checkers and we can just put our models away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, I'm sorry. There were some people that were really good for being sappers and that were good for going in small places and fighting other people in small places. And I think that still applies. Like, and then some places, other people's sappers just weren't as good. And
I'm cool with my Marines busting through walls, and I'm even cooler with my Golden Marines busting through walls.
There's some basements that I'm sorry, custodies are just not going to fit in.
But you can launch a Blood Angel from orbit, and he'll go right through the floor into that basement.
I mean, who knows? They got space steel or whatever that somehow stops a drop pod from going through a basement. I'm with you. So, I totally understand.
Have we actually told people what's changed? I'm not sure we have.
Well, okay. So you're right. Kind of jumped into it because it's exciting. This is like one of the. It sounds subtle, but this is really it's a big change. So what this is now, if you are charging into obscuring terrain, the engagement range is 2 inches, no longer 1 inches for enemy models within the obscuring terrain.
I love this change, and I'm also worried.
I think that this kind of hurts shooting armies. I mean, when I was playing more with my guard army, like, I understand it can be really annoying to like try to get to a manticore or something that is behind cover and shooting you outside of line of sight. But at the same time, like, it just crumples otherwise. Like, as soon as you touch it, it's gonna die. So yeah, I don't know. As a guard player, I kind of worry about like a firing base. But I understand that it's really annoying to face that firing base sometimes.
Yeah, your measurements have got to be spot on now. It's a lot more. Well, you got to be perfect if you want that stuff to be infallible now, rather than you could just be pretty lackadaisical and kind of get away with it. It's easy. It's harder to defend those positions. Is kind of what you're saying. Getting that, Tanya, if you want to set up there.
But I'm also like trying to visualize it in my head, because like normally like an obscuring piece of terrain, the footprint's pretty big. So if you're about an inch away from the wall, 1.1 inch away from the wall, you can still make it so that your tank is pretty well hidden from most angles on the board, at least at deployment. But as soon as you bring it out an inch farther, I just feel like there's so many more angles on that tank. I feel like it's going to be a lot harder to protect it from other long range shooting.
You mean like bringing it back even further to to take advantage of the distance? Yeah, could be. There could be some unintended consequences. Or we have to rethink. I guess overall screens and what have you. And there is certain things. You also we talk about playing by intent. It's another thing. It's like you just kind of tell your opponent, my models are here, they're right here. This is what I'm doing. And now that's kind of taken off the table. You got to be real precise with layering those platoon squads, or we're using guard there as an example, as the meat shields again.
Question for you guys: does this mean charges from reserve are less? If you're charging someone in a ruin from reserve, do you need to now roll an 8 rather than a 9?
You do, yeah, because
for now. That's a huge change. Like straight up, that's a massive change.
So the way that you tell whether or not, I'm sorry if I'm getting too pedantic here, but the way you tell if a charge is successful is, can you come within engagement range?
Correct. And as soon as you come within an inch of the terrain with this trait feature, you extend your engagement range to 2 inches.
Yeah. So things coming in, out of deep strike, let's use the bloodletters. Let's use, sanguinary guard, death company, or whatever. You're needing an 8 without any other bonuses. So let's think of a chaplain, or I'm sure there's other ways to get a +2. You're sometimes needing a 6.
I mean, that's it. Like, again, there's to Tanya's point, there's a double-edged sword in this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a great mechanic. I think that it lays out. I think that it makes terrain, especially if you have the footprint to mask it off, because it not only does just this with shooting and everything, but it's a factor for movement, right? Because you can't move normally. You can't move through engagement ranges. And so if the unit inside the terrain has enough of a footprint, you can essentially move block things. And the only way to dig them out is to go in there and fight them, which, again,
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth considering how you go into it. I mean, a unit with a big enough footprint is going to be able to block it out because their engagement range is now 2 inches. And you can essentially keep units out of cover by blocking out pieces of terrain and doing that. And then and I think that's a great mechanic. I think that there's application to it in regards of maneuvering. Okay, I have people that are holding this piece of terrain. Unless you want to come charge me and dig me out of it, you now have to stay that far away from the terrain just to be that much further, if that makes sense.
So here's there's probably some more ways to, I'm going to use the word jank this, being like, there's some ways to, and I don't want to use the word weaponize, but there's some ways to make this work in your favor.
Be like a 9-inch heroic intervention or something.
Extra consolidate and pile in is the best way I can think of making this activate. So you are charging someone who's on the inside of a ruin. So you are not on the inside of the ruin. You are not benefiting from the obscuring terrain. You're on the other side of it. You fight 2 inches, and then through the use of your consolidates and pile-ins, you end up outside 2 inches of that unit, and therefore they don't get to hit back. There's some ways of doing it on the inverse that I've seen demonstrated by diagram. Like I think the example I was shown had some Howling Banshees charging some Death Guard Marines.
Yep.
And they charged and they fought from 2 inches away, and then when they piled in, they were no longer in the obscuring of terrain, therefore making the engagement range of 1 inch, weren't within an inch, so the Death Guard didn't get to swing back.
Yeah.
I may have explained that poorly.
Dastardly.
I think it was pretty clear.
That could be a feel bad's moment should you get caught out of it, but it is a thing you can stop. You have all the power as the person whom that might be used against to kind of block that and make that not a thing.
What you're saying is that you can, once you leave the environment that extends that range, then it magically snaps back.
Yeah, if you're exactly.
Yeah,
so
exactly right.
The Plague Marines in this case ended their movement somehow for whatever reason within 1 inch of the terrain, and then the Howling Banshees move through the terrain, charge, and they're also, in this case, within 1 inch, and therefore the engagement range is now at 2 inches, and then they consolidate out of the terrain, so they're no longer an inch away, because again, the way engagement range works, right? You always have to consolidate closer, but technically you don't have to just move directly closer, right?
Yeah.
You can move around. And so in this case, the Howling Banshees have moved off to the side, now outside of 1 inch from the terrain, and it no longer applies where engagement range is 2 inches. And so the other player cannot choose to fight. They cannot activate the Plague Marines, although they did get hit by the Howling Banshees previously. They won't get to fight back, and that's just again, we're talking about abstracts and everything like that. The Plague Marine, the player with the Plague Marine should not have ended their move within 1 inch of the terrain.
Exactly right. So you flip the script. When I wanted to be, so now we see those ruins. We used to see them as defensible pieces. Like, I'm going to be inside. I'm going to be safe. You can now flip the script and be like, well, you have to stay safe from me if you're inside there, and I need to be 1.1 inches away from that terrain piece, and then you can't weaponize it against me. So right. It's kind of had the coin has flipped over, and now we're sitting on tails. Whereas you don't want to be 1.1 inside the wall, you want to be 1.1 away from the wall on the outside.
Yeah. But here's the actual errata here. This is for the obscuring trait. Add the following to the end of the terrain trait. While a model is within 1 inch of an area terrain feature with this trait, e.g. ruins, and the shortest line between it and enemy models crosses over and through the terrain feature, then while those models are within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of each other, they are within engagement range of each other. So if anything in that process short circuits or you change during the course of what you were talking about, Adam, then you could change the engagement range status.
So you say that they created this rule to stop feel badsies. But what I'm hearing is it's making just a whole bunch of new feel badsies.
It's all about perspective.
A little bit of adjustment. What this is doing is giving really across categorically giving more interaction. There's just potential to screw it up at the player level.
Yeah, it really does. I think that if you look at it in regards of the loss versus the gains, I think that more players, I think there were the feel badsies were reduced in more cases than otherwise by doing this, because it does open up to more cases. I mean, knights. I can think of examples where plenty of cases where there were things that could not get infantry inside of buildings because of whatever limitations, and now it's going to be pretty difficult in a lot of cases of how terrain is set up for that to really be recreated like that. I think it opens it up for big stuff for sure.
So do you think that this is going to require new, how in competitive game they have basically set terrain in some cases? Are the tournament organizers going to need to reassess those set terrain maps to address the shorter charge from deep strike and whatnot?
I now think so. Yes and no. I think in a lot of extents, some of the stuff we were doing already helps this a lot. The one when it can't be on the puck, can't be on the 40 mil objective base size. If you're using a mat for your objectives or whatever, you can be on that, but you can't be on the puck. I think we'll see either more instances of. See, what you don't want to have happen is that an objective is entirely at all times within an inch of a terrain piece, so that anybody wanting to come and contest it has to be within an inch of the terrain piece. You want to make it so you can be 1.1 away, that kind of stuff, or the opposite, and make them all the same, and everyone's got to scrap over all of them unanimously. You don't want to see it weighted one way or another. In some formats that have player place terrain in some bigger tournaments. This is a rule that's going to come up a lot more in those settings than others, where I get me as the player placing the terrain, I get to see if I can use it against you. I can, make this a skill that I can use to my advantage, by through placing the terrain correctly to not weaponize this, to make it something working in my favor rather than in yours. So it's going to be another little contested swing point in games, which I like it at that level. At the level where we have set terrain, we might need to reevaluate just where objectives are in relative to the ruins. Although, no, I think we do. I think we do need to have a look at it. The impacts will have to become apparent though. It'll become apparent what we need to do.
And you're saying set terrain is like when the TO sets built.
Yeah.
Like so has pre-placed terrain, then there's no player involvement in the terrain.
Yeah.
Outside of bringing your own fortification or whatever it is.
The best example is the WTC. So the World Team Championships is happening in the second week of August. It's going to be a big deal. First one ever. It's going to be amazing. And they have set terrain maps. Every mission has a terrain setup associated with that mission, and they have it for dense level tables, medium level tables, and light level tables, as in the terrain density of those tables is light, medium, and heavy. And they have exactly set to the millimeter things, and those kind of ones might need to be reevaluated.
Get good, man. That's everybody's playing with the same rules.
Is that what you said to Sanguinius when we went down to Cabanda? just get good, bro. Just get good.
Never gone down the Cabanda. We'll talk about that in part 2. Of this
I would love
episode.
to see somebody model the new Cabanda model with like some locks of Sanguinius' hair in his hand, like he's just.
Hey, we'll get there. We'll get there. Don't jump the gun.
Yeah, it's good. It's good times.
Yeah, this is dynamic change, and I do think it promotes interaction. And now the players that compete in that phase of the game or try to not compete or to be a part of that phase at all in the game are going to have to rethink things, and that's cool. I don't mind that. Again, I'm slightly biased because I also play Sanguinary Guard.
Does it seem like this iteration of the game like very heavily supports melee armies?
No, not as much as some other aspects have at other times. I know they reduced Overwatch, right? And that's one piece, but I don't think that this iteration extremely favors melee over. I mean, AP has been increased, but with the way that Armor of Contempt is now, it would be hard pressed for me to say that this one is necessarily more so than some of the other aspects.
I do feel like that if you're playing with just a highly slanted assault army, then you are playing on a little bit harder of a curve.
I've got a weird perspective on this, because if you guys will remember, at the start of 9th edition, we went, oh my god, we need to put so much more terrain on these tables to even this up, because it was so shooting dominated. It was so crazy how hard you could hit somebody turn 1 on a bowling ball. If AdMech hadn't have been nerfed and we were playing with it like 8th edition or 7th edition terrain, no other army would even need to fly. There would be no one else. Maybe freebooters, the crazy freebooters list.
Absolutely.
So it's weird. The codexes, I feel like, push shooting more than melee, and then every other construct we've made to over incentivize melee in order to try and balance it back up. Like all the terrain placement, the terrain rules, a lot of the FAQs and erratas, you will see a lot of the time it's nerfing shooting, and then but very few instances of it actually buffing melee. Like I can't tell you a time when I've ever seen a unit's data sheet get errata to have more attacks, or more strength. Maybe less points, but never like data set changes. But we have seen like almost unanimously, I'm thinking Ballistari, I'm thinking Broadsides, 2 of the premier shooting units in the game, having core removed from them because they were just too good. In addition to rolling changes and nerfs to things like Rangers and Vanguard, again and again and again. With
and the
crisis
layers
suits,
of buffs you can stick on things to do stuff.
And now, so I think the actual codexes are very shooting centric, and then everything else, all the erratas, is like, oh my god, trying to rebalance back to melee. I see where the perception is coming from though. For Tanya, if you were just getting the perspective of the game right as it sits right now, you'd be like, they're pushing melee on us through, and I think the biggest way that they push melee is through the missions. The missions incentivize melee. The flipping of objectives, the best way to flip an objective, charge them, kill them. You're not there, you are now. So you're there, they're not there anymore. That's the best way. And so the best way to get points is to be melee focused. So I absolutely agree. If you're looking at it through the lens right now, like you'd literally just join 9th edition, you'd be like, bada bing, bada boom, melee's where I want to be.
How many steamrollers can I put in this list? Metaphorical steamrollers. I don't know of an army that actually has steamrollers.
I used to have one in Blood Bowl. It was awesome.
The dwarven death roller.
Yeah, boy, it was sick.
Wasn't that, not to segue us, but wasn't that the one that like you got as soon as you cranked it up, you got the flagrant foul or
I mean,
foreign
it
object?
It was hilarious. Always a good time.
Well, I mean, it's going to be curious to see what we, with the changes, like, we talked a lot about Necrons and like there's a real melee build with the Necrons out there.
Yep.
There are ways that will the novelty of people being able to pull off a 6-inch reserves charge spawn some army list experimentation.
You want to hear the best example of what I was saying about GW not incentivizing shooting in their erratas and FAQs? Doomsday Arcs haven't been buffed. Their profiles haven't been buffed. Nothing speaks to me more about how they don't want to overbuff shooting than DDA's Doomsday Arcs being the same as they are in the Codex.
They're not doomy enough for you?
No. When
Not
you have
compared to, I mean,
Yeah.
the improvement made to las cannons for Chaos is a huge sign of like, I mean, they've made some changes, but it really is not anything in comparison to what we're talking about. Like for Necrons, what I'm exactly on what Adam's saying. Like it's just a D6. It's
like in all reality, the Doomsday Arc could have a profile comparable to a Hammerhead. Could, yeah. Instead, it's got D6 shots. If it moved, it's got D6 shots that are worse than a battle cannon. It's pretty abysmal. I mean, by modern standards, like by the current state of the game.
Like he just left it in antiquity. What are ways that we can think of at the top of our head to improve the charge range or charge roll of units?
Yeah. Do you mean the actual range, or do you mean the actual like the function?
The range. Yeah, it's because we're talking about. Is there any way to get any better than a 6? I don't think so.
Any better than a 6?
Any better than needing a 6 on to charge into a 2-inch engagement range?
I think GSE can do a 5.
Oh, because it can appear a little closer?
Yeah. They can appear 8 inches away, and they can have, I think it's +1 or +2. But either way, they can appear 8 inches away and roll 3d6 for that charge. And so they can be going, I'm not sure if they can get to a 5, but they can definitely go for a 6 on 3d6. Which
Calidus, right? Calidus is what?
Yep.
+3?
Yep.
Something like
and
that.
That's how far they start away from you, which is just, right. I mean, you roll a 1 and it's a unfailable charge.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
The Coast of Bloodletters we were talking about earlier can do the 3d6
and with +1 as well. So they'd have a 6 on 3d6 because they've already got +1 from the instrument.
That's a pretty solid charge.
That's very and you just 1 CP. If you triple one it,
we'd still figure out a way to fail it though.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, I mean, like Blood Angels, you got +1 all the time, but a chaplain could make that the 6.
Yeah, the chaplain specifically does not, but
stack.
It stacks. Yeah. It does not work with any other plus, but a chaplain can give a +2.
Yeah, I think those are the best ones.
The chaplain just does that, and then it's an aura, right? It doesn't have to be on a unit specifically.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so things can come in around the chaplain. Chaplain starts on the table, bring things in, get multiple units needing a 6. Does that help Templar at all? Does that help Death Watch? I mean, of course it helps, but is it like a meaningful impact?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Deathwing Knights is a unit that I've been looking for an excuse to play. They just got a points reduction, and now with this change, I think that's a really good choice for me. Deep striking and needing a 6 with a reroll. Next, just move advance a chaplain on a bike. Deep strike to Deathwing Knights. Send the boys in. That sounds really exciting to me now.
What makes them more appealing? Or I mean, like with their weapon loadout and that kind of stuff.
Well, okay, so they've got a couple of different things. One of them is being they've got a stratagem for 1 extra rend and an extra and +1 to wound. And so I think it's only against big targets though. I think it's only against vehicles and monsters and such. But with knights being in the game, I could deep strike into the ruin and try and use the ruin like that, or things of that nature. There's a lot of things you can do where they'll because for those who don't know, they got weapon skill 2 and they all come with a thunder hammer except for the boss man. He comes with a weird flail that has carryover wounds. And you can, I'm not sure you would in this economy, but you can spend a CP to mastercraft that flail, so it's 3 damage. And so for every swing, you can kill 3 dudes like it's Sigma. So that's pretty cool. And then they've just got thunder hammers that hit on 2s. They don't need any auras They don't need any buffs. There's strength 8, AP 2-3 damage, no next to hit. So legitimately, they're one of the few units in the game that doesn't need a captain or a chapter master or anything to help them do what they do. They're just self-supporting, which I adore. And so yeah, they're the same points now as a guy with as a Deathwing Terminator. I think it's the same with Thunderhammer Storm Shield. They're exactly the same points.
Oh,
They
and hit
don't-
on 2s. There we go.
Yeah, and they just hit on 2s. I mean, they don't get obsec like you would in a Deathwing
They
Vanguard.
won't need it if they've beaten everything around them to a pulp.
Who needs? Yeah, no one's alive. Who needs the obsec? It's fine. It's fine. This is fine. And they're extremely hard to kill on the return. Three attacks each with a 1-up armor save standing. They won't get armor of contempt, but doesn't matter
Because they have the
for
shields.
them. They've already got a shield. Who cares? They're not missing anything. They're fine because they hit on 2s. And yeah, they've got some good stratagem support that allows them to go to AP3 or even AP4 in Assault Doctrine. In addition, in Assault Doctrine, they reroll to wound against big targets for being Dark Angels. So they just like 5 of those guys in Assault Doctrine with the CP, they get actually pretty close to killing a big knight by themselves without any rerolls. Add rerolls and they totally will do it.
Well, it's a compelling argument. Let's take a break. Then we can come back and get your jabs in against Sanguinius and the Blood Angels while we talk about this glorious model we've seen previews.
Pretty sure you got jabbed enough in the face.
Yeah.
Boris. Just pop with that talon. Pop.
I realized what I was doing as I was saying it, and that was my gift.
I know. Thank you.
We'll see you in a minute.
Lion never got his beat that bad.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
Hey everybody, we are back. Thanks for checking out our sponsor. Okay, I know we teased this in the first part of the show, but that model that was also teased, what was it? Was it earlier this year or was it the end of last year?
I want to say, didn't we see it around? It was earlier this year. I mean, it was definitely this year.
I'm pretty sure it was LVO. It was the GW previewed LVO, like in January. That showed us.
It feels like a while ago.
I remember one of the GW guys being like, "There are rumors circulating. There's a big angry boy going to be coming out," because it's one of those models you were just like, maybe one day if they got around to it, and no, they got around to it and they knocked it out of the freaking park.
It's got multiple head options and stuff too.
Oh, I love the helmet.
I love the helmet too.
I love the helmet. It's so badass. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so we're talking about Kabanda, and this is a basically a giant bloodthirster.
Is he numero uno bloodthirster in the
No.
in the canon, or is that Scarbrand, or there's another one? There's a third one, yeah.
I mean, there's several, but
8.
yeah, there's maybe even 8, if not maybe a few more. At least but they're definitely in multiples of 8. But anyways, he's not the numero uno. He's big up there. But he definitely has, kind of like Makari, like he has a very clear vendetta against a very specific flavor and color of Space Marine.
So in the canon, in the lore, was he the emissary that approached the Blood Angels prior to everything going crazy?
Tanya, have you read Fear to Tread yet?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Then yeah, I won't go any further
You
with
have
that
to
line
now
of thinking.
Yeah, now you have to stop talking, Adam.
I do.
Shame. Real shame. All right.
Shame.
Look, we're trying to avoid
I'm-
spoilers, as we
I'm-
know folks are working their
I'm
way
quite
through.
proud of myself for walking to the precipice and then stepping back.
Yeah. You're still
I
talking.
usually love to
You
leap.
Definitely.
I
Yep, I was
absolutely
going to
still
say,
talking.
you're
It's not-
walking on invisible air right now.
It is no secret that
Wily Coyote.
the Blood Angels and Sanguinius are also Korn's favorite, and that Angron was a second banana.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I would go back to. I mean, and I'm not particularly attached to Angron either, but I think we go back to Korn doesn't really care from where the blood flows. I think that the Blood Angels would have been a great one to add to the collection, but clearly, I mean, I still don't think that they're out of the thick of it yet.
No. Well, someone said to me, I think Korn really wanted Sanguinius and the Blood Angels and was pretty sure he was going to get Angron anyway. So he was just like, I don't need to work on that one.
Yeah, I don't need to
Pretty
invest
sure
in
it's
that.
That's gonna end up fine. Let's work on this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Spend the time. Yeah, there you go. This model, multiple head options. There's some examples of like world-class painters that have put some paint on this thing. It's pretty glorious. This model is amazing.
One of the things I've always struggled with painting of bloodthirsters and Korn models in general is you want to have the brass and the copper, but it clashes with the red of the skin a lot of the time. a lot of time you can't quite get that color contrast right, where it doesn't look like it's overwhelmingly warm, like it's overwhelmingly like a warm palette, and then you just feel like it's just a bit messy. There are a couple of these, if people want examples of how to pull that technique off, that just nail it. The first one being by Liam Howell. He's got a nice, like, really dulled copper with a high, like, it's got high contrast on the highlights, like he's almost done non-metallic metal to do it, and it's just, that's one of the best I've seen. It's
The face is
really
unreal
good.
on this one.
Oh,
Like-
the face is phenomenal.
Like it's almost like one of those like demon mask. I mean, I know it's a demon, but you know what I'm saying. It really kind of evokes that feeling.
Yeah, and there's one later down the pile by Matt Wingrove. He's gone for the black, kind of the black skin on it, and with little touches of red here and there. I'm a big fan of that as well. That one evokes to me. Anybody remember the old Chaos Dwarf range from G-Dub? The color palette they used there. I was always a big fan of that. It was very understated. Looks like they hang out next to volcanoes and crazy wild stuff like that. I'm a big fan of that aesthetic.
Where he's chosen to add the color, I think, is a great example of how to bring areas of interest and like make your model stand out. Like that color around the mask on the helmet faceplate.
Yeah,
and how it's like glowing, and that's the center of the interest on the model. Really great choice. And then of course the blood effects on the axe and stuff. Like lots of texture and stuff on this model. It's out of control. It's an intimidating model. I can see how like people may want to add this to their collection, not even know where to start.
Has anyone seen it in the flesh? Like, how big is he?
I haven't. I've not seen it in the flesh.
Man, I hope it's just like, I mean, because Bellacor's pretty big, right? I mean, they took him and they juiced him up to bigger, arguably, than Bloodthirster. And that's with the base and everything. Bloodthirsters were pretty spectacular, all in all. The Archaon of Age of Sigmar is one of the biggest models I've seen. I'd be really interested to see where this one ranks in that kind of scale and range.
There's a line here that is just so 40k. Even the large demons don't enjoy being shot in the face. It's uncomfortable at best. And Commander sometimes takes the remarkably sensible step of donning his ornate battle helmet. So even Commander, more than your chapter master, your Primarch, is just like, I got to protect the goods, and puts his helmet on.
Got to protect the moneymaker.
That's right. Love it. Could you use Commander at Age of Sigmar? Like, I know you could use it. It's probably going to have 30k rules. Most likely going to have 40k rules as well. If not 40k, it's usually the Bloodthirster. Are we going to see Sigmar rules, you think? Because there's nothing that is overtly...
Every demon, every special character demon does have rules in Sigmar.
Yeah. Well, Bellacor's got rules in Sigmar, yeah?
He does.
Yeah.
But I don't know if necessarily everybody... I can't say that I've seen Kabanda translate to Warhammer Fantasy in any... I can't think of an instance where I've seen it. It may very well be out there, but I can't think of an instance of it.
I will say down at the bottom of this, it does say Kabanda isn't ready to join the new edition of Warhammer the Horus Heresy just yet, but we'll bring you details on his release as soon as we can, including a free-to-download PDF rules for using him in your games.
Oof.
Those games typically get played like 3,000 points, like it was in the previous version was played at a higher point level.
Yeah, one thing they did well with Horus Heresy, and they always, and I'm pretty sure it's translated into the new edition as well, is that there is a big jump for trying to include something like a Commander, something like a Primarch level model. You find you can play them at 2,000 points, but then you just have your Primarch and not that much to support them. Whereas, at 3,000 points in Heresy, you get your Spartan, you get your Terminators, or your retinue to follow around your Primarch to go in there and get stuck in, and then your opponent can usually afford to do the same, or have stuff that will kill a Primarch, kill a Commander. Because it was always a funny thing with 6th and 7th edition. Skews in those editions were always so much more impactful because you just had some guns that couldn't hurt some things. Like, bolt guns couldn't hurt the front facing of a Rhino.
It's real troubling. I told you, my first experience with that. But I took lightning claws and all this stuff. Well, I brought land raiders, so good luck. You can't do that.
Yeah. And so there's usually a bit of it's almost a community approved little bit of a bracket system where you get above the 2,400, 2,500 point point mark in the game, and you're like, it's totally fine to take Lords of War, totally fine to take, multiple aircraft if you want, take your Commanders, take your Sanguiniuses and Lionel Johnsons and all those things. Don't take Russ though. That's a mistake.
This thing has to be huge. I mean, I think
Ouch.
this is it has to be on a 100mm round bases.
Oh, easy, man. Easy.
And this could be a big chunk of resin.
Mm.
This is going to be something you do not want to carry back and forth off into the game store, I don't think.
No, in fact, it seems like the kind of model you want to go and get possibly a laser cut carry case for, especially, or it's one of those ones where you want to pin the wings and be able to take them off for transport.
Pinned wings, magnetized to a base, so there's no shifting around, no pulling in and out of foam, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd definitely be pinning the.
It's probably very sturdy, by the way, like resin, it typically is. But yeah, I don't trust myself with that big old curvy whip.
Dude, I played ogres and it broke the crap out of them. No, do not trust. It's not the model's fault. It's 100% me.
Yeah,
like, you know.
Hey, know your limits. It's very important.
This isn't a breakup. No, it's not you. It's me. It's 100% me.
So I call myself Hurricane Tanya because I always break something whenever I go to the game store. So of course I decided I wanted to play Night Haunt, right? If you've ever painted a Night Haunt model, even if you just have it on your painting handle and you touch it with your brush, it's like boy yo 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 yo. So why did I decide to on this army? But I think I'm going to make a magnetized carry case for this army specifically because there is no putting it in foam.
Yeah, that's probably real safer to do it that way.
I wonder if you could make a specific carry case for Kabanda.
100%. I know people who laser cut foam to order for stuff. They would do it. They would do you a laser cut Kabanda outline. I'm thinking of getting some done for my Imperial Knights when I start them. Although I'm also considering getting I wondered how this would go with the big models. You know, the magnetized carry trays, carry cases. I'm not sure how that would go because I'm expecting to like take the arms off, have the carapace, have the torso magnetized as well. And I'm not sure it's worth it for that. It might be better off just getting laser cut foam. I've
gone to the magnet trays recently, and I seem to enjoy them. I actually feel like I get more models on a smaller like footprint of space, and they don't touch each other. So and there's no getting them in and out of foam, and that is like you will break models, or the filigree or whatever cool looking bit you put on top of their helmet or something. You could break that going out of foam. And when I'm talking about not just for storage, like we're talking about in between rounds of tournaments, putting them in and out. You're putting them in and out of the foam. Maybe 300%, 400% more than someone that may just be pulling them out one time to play.
Yeah, I broke like all the bayonets off of my guardsmen, so I really want to explore other options other than foam. I'm not too sad about my guardsmen because they're guardsmen, but yeah, I would like to try magnetizing a case, so I might have to pick your brain on that a little bit, Paul.
The guardsmen don't stay on the table long enough for people to realize, is that a broken bayonet?
No.
Like, just shoot him.
I mean, I literally just pick them up, like because you remove entire squads sometimes, right? So I just like literally pick them up all in a big pile and then put it into my tray. A big pile. People like lose their mind.
Yeah, I built a full 100 guardsmen with bayonets, and I think maybe about 50% have bayonets.
That's like how many? Oh, we could do it over under
50%. I have a little. Every time I find them, I have a little box that I put all my broken painted bayonets in. That one day I'll try and reattach.
Use plastic glue and the Games Workshop paint or miniature handle. That's how I put back snap plastic bits.
It's fair. Probably works very well. How have you gone with transporting the Tanith, Red? Because that's probably perfect for what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, most of them are 1996 metal models, so it's not as fair, I guess, in comparison. There are some
pockets.
Yeah, I mean, they do pretty well. They're pretty durable. But so I use a Citadel case, and it has the old foam. I use 2 Citadel cases and the old foam infantry trays, I guess you could say. And so they all just lay down in their little individual spots, and then I put foam around them, and they do extremely well for the most part. The worst case that I have to deal with, especially if I put it in the airplane and ship it in cargo with my bag or whatever, is that if it gets so cold,
my mind.
So wild.
I know. If it gets cold enough, then really the only thing I have to worry about, especially for the Tanith, given that they're metal models, is the what it looks like for the bases. Because they're glue into the bases, it gets so cold when they travel that the glue will snap. And so all I end up doing really is just re-gluing them back into their bases. That's all.
I've had some success with making my own carry cases with soundproofing foam. It comes in like square sheets, and it's kind of like corrugated. That works really well. I've taken minis into the carry-on on a plane before in that stuff, and with really minimal, like I think one of my orcs axes, the axe head snapped off. Other than that, they were all fine, and that stuff is really inexpensive. But even that, I don't know if these Nighthaunt will survive. I am a hurricane. If I can break them, I will.
Yeah, again, we're talking about know your limits as far as that kind of stuff goes. With like model care and maintenance and getting them to and from the tournament hall or whatever in between games, I realized that the cart that I would roll like my army around in between rounds at a tournament, haven't used it in 2 years, so I had to get a new one.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah, I guess the one I have was a little, I used it for quite some time. A little beat up, had to get a new one. It's little things. But again, same thing. I don't want to necessarily be pulling the models in and out of foam in between rounds every game. So have, opt for this other option, try to make things easier, speed things up, be a little bit kinder on the models themselves. There's all that. But no, I switched for my Death Guard and Blood Angels to magnets and the trays. And you could do, like a buddy of mine, he's like, yo, how do I get super low tech with this? You can get, I forget what they're called, but I think they're called wedding trays or something that caterers will use in the restaurant industry, but they're just big metal pans, very thin, very wide metal pans, probably hold 1,000 models.
Sick. Oh, you mean it's just a big platter?
Yeah, a tray. It's a tray.
Awesome.
Of some kind.
It's pretty apt because I'm pretty married to this hobby.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But like you could bake on it or whatever. But there's also like you see those, like if you've ever been in a restaurant kitchen, there's probably like a rack of things that you slide the trays into. The trays that go into those racks. Mm. I don't know how expensive they are. I've never purchased one myself, but I've certainly bought like cookie sheets.
Next Adepticon team tournament, you just rock in with your marriage platter rack and just pull out your.
You could probably hold the whole team tournament's miniatures.
That's what I mean. Yeah, cool. Racks. Everyone just stores them on those racks at the end of the round and goes and have lunch. What a world.
But yeah, I mean, the dude was like, yo, what's a low barrier to entry for my storing the models that I've just got? And like, yeah, you could go with one of those things. A little bit of art in finding the right magnet depth, width, height, whatever the distance between the bottom of the base and flush with the bottom with the table would be.
And we go back to, again, like this, I think it's great for transporting. I do not recommend, it's just something to be cognizant of when you're looking at travel. If you really do go with the cargo route like I do, that cold that it travels in the cargo bay is so cold that it'll snap magnets. And so if you think that you're good, like traveling with that, I think it
freezes the super glue is what
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it does that, and then you're going to open it up and all your models will be in disarray, unfortunately, because of how it'll get handled. So just be cognizant of that. It's very delicate process that I've learned over time of what I could get away with traveling like that. Sometimes it's necessary, just given long travel, if that's a thing.
Man.
You just got to know what you're doing, man.
Yeah. I know we kind of segued from talking about the glorious model. It's kind of hard not to want to get that model and like start a whole demon army.
I mean, you think of that one, and then what someone could probably do with the Sanguinius model. Probably some really good dioramas that they could pull off.
Okay, I was going to say Commands goes down in the 8th round, but he wouldn't even make it to the 8th round.
Dang.
So there was, I think I remember seeing at the Adepticon Golden Demon entry, there was
one. I remember that.
It was it was a pre-Kabanda setup, so it was one of the G-Dub plastic Bloodthirsters versus the awesome Forge World Sanguinius, and I just think about them remaking that now. He's probably like really annoyed. He's like, why didn't I just do this 1 year later?
I give him full credit for doing it with what he had available.
It was gorgeous. It was one of
It was
cool.
Really good. It was amazing
because it had such depth and level to it, because they were almost at eye height, which means the Bloodthirster was like down a hill from Sanguinius, and Sanguinius was about to spear him through between the eyes. It looked freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But in saying that, have you guys Demons of the Ruinstorm from Forge World? Have you guys looked at those models?
Yeah. Oh man, they are boss.
Oh, they're really good. I haven't seen one in the flesh.
They're fantastic. The paint job that the GW folks did on that Forge World and everything is really good because it really captures like this kind of primordial chaos kind of approach to these demons, and they you know, a lot of times I get these Diablo vibes. They're probably the most hardcore Diablo looking demons.
You're
That's
talking
really
specifically about like Samael and the Ruin Storm demon brutes and that kind of stuff.
the brutes for sure, I think is what he's referencing. But
they're the one that I'm talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, those demons are for sure on another level. I really appreciate the aesthetic. I kind of wish that there was more to it because, you know, we get these, and I get it. Like, I think Pink Horrors and their whole little family tree of blues and whatever are good, but because I think it does capture that kind of whimsical Tzynchian feel. I think the Slaneshi are okay. I think nowadays, like, I think the mask, they really took it to the next level. Also with I can't remember the Slanesh demon that has like the harp made out of the person.
Oh yeah.
I really think they were tapping it. It's a fantastic one. But I think the demonettes could probably do with some updates, right? I think the blood letters, while they're like really kind of wiry looking, I think the demon brutes really capture the corn aesthetic with kind of how they're bulk and everything. It's really good.
I like what your comments you made about the kind of primordial, showing that real like deep side of chaos, the undivided chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these are the dark things, and they aren't just like scary, whimsy, nightmare things. These are like brutish, like just
there's no joke side of
destruction. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. Yeah, I could definitely see that in that design now that you mentioned it.
I just love them. They make me want to do a heresy demon army. Samus, man, have they done well with Samus? Like our first introduction in the heresy novels, he was like one of our first points of call with all of demonhood, all of chaos, was the voice of Samus, and so impactful.
I wonder how demons and stuff, and I'm actually curious about all the non-marine factions in the heresy to see how they all plug in now.
Oh yeah, you're talking about like for heresy, like bringing the demons into it.
There's going to be the Mechanicum and the Custodes and stuff coming pretty soon. We know they're coming down. I don't know when, but hopefully soon.
If I had to say, demons I don't know how they are in 2.0 because we're still awaiting the full release of the rules. But in the original Horus Heresy, demons were OP. Demons were incredibly powerful. They just had so much. They operated on a different rule set, and they felt otherworldly. It felt like everyone else was playing fair, mostly Space Marine or Space Marine combat, and then the demons just do what they want. And it really captured how they feel in the novels as well, because they were so alien at the time of the heresy. No one really knew what to do, how to handle them, how to combat them. Everyone was just kind of making it up as they went. And so demons always felt like first and foremost, they have pretty much AP3 across the board or better. So they are just Space Marine killing juggernauts. And they popped up from their deep struck like army wide. They were stupidly resilient. Do you remember in I can't remember which of the first three novels it is, but they encounter a pink horror. Yeah. And they're just trying to blow this thing up. They're just like unleashing like full squads in corridor fighting, and they can't kill this one horror.
Yeah, it's that guy starts reading that book and it just comes out of it, right? Like, I think if I remember correctly, I may be mistaken, but I was pretty sure Euphrates Keeler was like somehow involved with it, and this thing goes off, and then I think it was the Luna Wolves or Sons of Horus end up having to deal with it. Yeah,
you're right. During those 2+ rollable days.
Yes, but see, that's what I wanted them to. That's what I'm really happy they captured in the first like press of the heresy. They felt otherworldly, and they felt like you couldn't come to grips with them. It was really cool. I'd have mates who would be playing pretty competent, strong heresy armies, and just be like, "Got table for demons, couldn't do anything."
You could throw psychers in the mix, like with invisibility. I mean, it was pretty brutal.
It was really good, and I'd have mates just being like, "Yeah, they just hit their warp gates popped up. They hit all their deep strikes plumb, like because they'd have a lot of ways to mitigate bad deep strikes, and they just rolled me like, it was pretty cool that they had that feel to it. So I'm interested to see what they do with them now. There are some amazing demon models still. Like Korvax Utterblight is another really cool sculpt.
That's a Force one too, right?
Yeah, just a blob. It's just
it goes that otherworldly thing. That's like where it looks, something out of a horror movie.
He's got that real trash can aesthetic. He's got like that Oscar the Grouch aesthetic, where he's just like, I am what lives in your bin, and Yeah, you're not going to be happy to meet me.
Lives in the bin.
Lives in the bin.
Yeah. Oh well, that's like there's big changes in Warhammer 40,000, and that's the thing. I think there's we've had this is like the second set of changes in recent memory, and I think it's easy to kind of get fatigued or discouraged by that. But this is like some of the changes have really benefited a lot of players out there, and these most recent ones I think are more designed to create interactivity in the game where we want to be interacting with each other, like our models on the table interacting with each other.
And I know this is might be counterintuitive, but if you know there are big changes coming down the pipeline, and there's likely to be quite a few of them at once, feel free to just take a step back and wait for them to all roll in. Because I have friends of mine who have been a little bit worn down by the last 2 weeks, and that's because at every point, at every time a new rules thing or FAQ errata came out, they reevaluated their entire way of playing the game, wrote a bunch of new lists, sometimes bought new models, and then something else comes out next week and makes them change. And if you know there's a bunch of stuff coming, just take a step back, give it a couple of weeks to digest, and then make your decisions. You'll might be happier and have a little bit more longevity.
Yeah, I think only like realizing it's cool to only get the models that to purchase the models you actually want and will enjoy painting during these times. Is being a self-admitted filthy meta chaser. Got to have these conversations with yourself every now and then.
Exactly right.
But I'm excited. I talk, a little bit of tongue in cheek about how this really benefits the Blood Angels, but it really, like the Blood Angels are actually already doing pretty well. But what this does is kind of give even more life to like the assault-based armies, and there are a ton of them out there.
Yeah, heaps.
People want to get those world leaders in action.
Oh, dude, have we really spoken about Chaos Space Marines?
No, we've talked just a bit.
We got so far through it. Yeah.
Oh, next week's show, I think.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we talk about get deep into like a Black Legion list.
So pick your poison. They're all good. They're all good.
There's a lot of great stuff.
That book is thick. Like we see a supplement come down, House Raven, Cult of Strife, where you get you get a cool trait, you get 3 or 4 warlord traits, 3 or 4 relics and stuff like that. Then maybe a half page of stratagems. Essentially, that Chaos Space Marine book is 8. I think it's 8 or 9 of those supplements stuck together with generics of all those things. So for those who don't know, Black Legion has their own trait. So on top of getting all the Heretic Astartes stuff, you get a Black Legion trait, which is good. You get a Black Legion secondary. You get a full 6 warlord traits, a full 6 relics, and then a full page of stratagems. GW has given so much service to these legions and given them so much flavor that I'm so excited about that book, because I think there's going to be so many awesome builds coming from it for a really long time.
10,000 years in the making.
That's right, baby. Hopefully it's a little not as broken as the second edition. What was it, the spear? What was the lance? No, it was the lance. Dark Lance or something. Can't remember. But there was the second edition Chaos book. It was or is it the third edition one? It's touted as the best Chaos book ever done for any Chaos faction.
Is Chaos Space Marines 3.5 edition is probably the best codex ever written.
I know. It's still thrown around as the best ever written. So crazy. But hopefully it's not that good. But hopefully it's good enough to keep people interested and excited about the faction, because it's been a long time between drinks. Like, wow.
I love how you could juice up your Chaos Lord back then. I don't want to get nostalgic, but having like an infiltrating Chaos Lord move 8 inches and charge and stuff is just very fun.
What if I could tell you could have a Chaos Lord that had 12 attacks that hit on 2s, with mortal wounds on 6s to wound, re-rolling. Oh, and it's, of course, if you're in a wanton slaughter, you've got exploding 6s to hit as well.
I was going to say, doesn't sound like anything you couldn't pull off at some point in the Space Marine Codex, so good on the Chaos Lord. About time.
I'm listening.
It's good. It's a good book. Well, yeah.
Will people get defilers on the table?
No.
Yeah. Only for lack of faith, Adam.
Yeah. But you will see a Khorne Lord of Skulls, which I think is a good, yeah. If you're not going to see Defilers, this is fine.
But you think Lord of Skulls are making it?
I legit think an Iron Warriors Lord of Skulls is phenomenal, is very powerful.
You would give a little teaser as to why you think that's the case?
It's probably got the best shooting in the book, which is amazingly cool to say.
For volume of shots and like damage
for volume. Yeah. It's toughness 8 with 30 wounds and a 2+ save, and it gets Armor of Contempt. So it's a 2+ with Armor of Contempt with 30 wounds to chew through. You can buff its durability in a bunch of ways. You can buff its shooting in a bunch of ways. And it's just the behemoth we always wanted it to be.
Does it have the trait where it ignores cover, and then you also can't reroll wounds against it?
Can't reroll wounds against it.
Yeah, that's pretty mean.
Correct. Will not cost you any CP now to take it in a super heavy auxiliary because of the new rules changes that came in. Because as long as the rest of your army is Iron Warriors and it's Iron Warriors, you don't pay any CP for the super heavy auxiliary. So he's not costing you anything to take now, which is, I think, is the kicker. Because the Court of Skulls has been good in the past, but hasn't been able to justify how much you're giving up to take it. You're not giving up anything apart from the points, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, nice. All right, look, you got to tune in next week. We'll talk about some Chaos list and some additional rule sets for them. I'm pretty excited about it. Chaos, like I said, the game's better when there's great bad guys, and the bad guys are just getting greater and greater.
And I mean, had enough of Xenos, you know. All the best armies that recently have been Xenos. Let's bring back the Astartes, good or bad, spicy, non-spicy, mellow, mild, however you want to take it. Give us some Astartes at the top.
I was going to say, I mean, I think that GW is pretty deliberate in it. I think they came out and said that this was the age of the Xenos, and it definitely has.
They definitely said this is the year of the Xenos. They didn't say anything about any other years.
Well, I mean, they came back and said that Chaos will get its turn. And so it's just a matter of time.
Well, it's true. We could look back. We're probably, holy crap. Now that 2021's over, we can look back and say that was a Xenos year.
Isn't this the year of Chaos, though?
Yes,
it's supposed to be. Yeah, it's supposed to be. Yeah. We're getting there.
Okay, well, better late than never.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see y'all next week.
COVID.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See ya.
Good night.
The Sept tenets demand you tune in next week. For the greater good, of course.